Namaskar, welcome you to this new session on disaster risk reduction and management. This session is part 1 of the section 3, that is on vulnerability and exposure. Today we will understand the concept of vulnerability and exposure in the context of disaster risk management, and then we will go deep into vulnerability. These two elements, vulnerability and exposure, are critical in understanding how and why certain communities and systems are more affected by disasters than others. Let us move on this informative journey to understand how vulnerability and exposure shape disaster impacts. To start introduction to vulnerability and exposure, let us define these two key elements. Vulnerability refers to how susceptible a system, community or individual is to harm these exposed to hazards. It can be shaped by various social, economic and environmental factors. Exposure means having people, poverty or resources located in areas prone to hazards. When combined, these two factors determine the severity of the impact a disaster can have. Understanding these helps us design better strategies to manage risks and build more resilient communities. Let us have overview of vulnerability. It is about understanding conditions that make communities prone to disaster impacts. These can include: number 1, poor infrastructure; number 2, limited resource; and number 3, social inequalities. Understanding these factors is very crucial in risk management, as it allows us to identify who or what is most at risk. This helps to tailor interventions to strengthen resilience. We come across 3 types of vulnerabilities. Number 1 is social, number 2 is economic, and number 3 is environmental. Let us go detail into social vulnerability. Social vulnerability addresses how different social and demographic conditions impact a community's ability to respond to and recover from hazards. Factors like poverty, inequality, marginalization play significant roles. If we do not address social vulnerability, our disaster response efforts may fall short, leaving certain groups behind and prolonging recovery times. Now let us discuss the impact of poverty on vulnerability. Poverty is one of the most significant contributors to social vulnerability. People living in poverty often lack basic resources such as housing, access to health care and education. This not only affects their preparedness but also their ability to recover after a disaster. Financial limitations mean that even a small scale events can lead to severe hardship. Addressing poverty is therefore a cornerstone of effective disaster management. Now inequality, which is also a key driver of vulnerability. Inequality magnifies vulnerability by creating disparities in access to resources and opportunities. Marginalized groups often lack the necessary information and resources to prepare for disasters. Gender inequality, for instance, may prevent women from accessing shelters or assistance in many societies. Tackling inequality ensures that all groups have a fair chance to prepare for, respond to and recover from hazards. Another factor, marginalization, that also impacts vulnerability. Marginalized groups often face exclusion from essential services and decision making process. They may live in isolated areas that limited resources, infrastructure and poor access to emergency services. This makes them highly vulnerable during disasters and prolong their recovery phenomenon. We need inclusive policies that bring marginalized voice to the forefront of disaster planning. Now let us think how we can address social vulnerability. Reducing social vulnerability means improving economic conditions, ensuring equitable access and empowering communities. Policy that reduce poverty and promote inclusivity can create more resilient communities. Community engagement is crucial in disaster management as it fosters trust and ensures that interventions are culturally relevant and effective. What have we learned so far about social vulnerability? We have learned that social vulnerability, it refers to factors that make certain groups more susceptible to disaster impacts, including age, health, income and social support of the systems. These elements shape how different communities experience and recover from disasters. Understanding social vulnerability is very crucial for designing targeted interventions that reduce risk and enhance community resilience. Now, let us come to second aspects of vulnerability, that is the environmental aspects. Let us try to understand environmental vulnerability. It refers to how natural and human systems are harmed due to environmental changes. This can include issues like deforestation, pollution and climate change. When ecosystems are degraded, their ability to buffer against disasters like floods or storms weakens. Managing environmental vulnerability helps protect communities and maintain ecosystem services that are vital for resilience. Now, ecosystem degradation and its consequences. Degraded ecosystems lose their capacity to provide essential services like clean water and fertile soil. This can lead to increased flood risk, water scarcity and loss of biodiversity. Soil erosion and desertification, for instance, compromise agricultural productivity and hence a reduction in the food security. Reversing ecosystem degradation is not just about protecting nature, but safeguarding human well-being. Loss of biodiversity diminishes an ecosystem ability to adapt. Now, let us look how climate change is leading to environmental vulnerability. Climate change is a significant driver of environmental vulnerability. Rising sea levels, increased extreme weather events and temperature shifts all pose threats. Coastal communities face more droughts, disrupt agriculture and water supply. These changes add layers of complexity to disaster management. Adaptation and mitigation strategies must go hand in hand to address these challenges. Let us see how specific climate change impacts vulnerability. Rising sea levels affect coastal settlements, leading to land loss and saltwater intrusion. Extreme weather such as hurricanes and heavy rainfall can disrupt infrastructure and livelihoods. Temperature increase contribute to heat waves and wildfires, impacting both human health and biodiversity. These challenges emphasize the need for global action and local adaptation. Now, what are the strategies to reduce environmental vulnerability? Reducing environmental vulnerability involves number 1, restoring ecosystems, number 2, adopting sustainable land use practices. There is another community led initiative such as reforestation and wetland conservation. They also play a significant role. These efforts strengthen natural defenses and help mitigate disaster impacts. Another practice is sustainable land management practice, which is vital to prevent degradation and promote resilience. Now, let us recap what we have learned so far from environmental vulnerability. This highlights how the degradation of the ecosystem, deforestation and loss of biodiversity increase susceptibility to disasters. These weakened natural systems can exacerbate the impacts of hazards, reducing a community's resilience and recovering capacity. Understanding and addressing environmental vulnerability is very essential for sustainable risk management and enhancing long-term resilience. The third vulnerability segment is because of the economy. Economic vulnerability refers to how prone an economy is to disruptions due to its structure or resilience on a specific sectors. Economies dependent on natural resources are especially vulnerable to market fluctuations and environmental changes. This makes diversifying income sources and investing in resilience essential for economic stability and long-term growth. Now, let us discuss natural resource dependence and risk. Reliance on natural resources can make economies more vulnerable due to market volatility and environmental fluctuations. For example, oil price fluctuation can severely impact oil dependent countries. Overexploitation of natural resources can deplete the resources, compromising future economic stability. Addressing these risks involves promoting sustainable resources, their use and diversifying economic activities. How climate change impacts the economy of the community. Climate change further exacerbates economic vulnerability by affecting critical sectors like agriculture and water resource. Drought and unpredictable weather patterns can lead to crop failures, impacting food security and livelihoods. Water scarcity affects industries and communities alike. Next, adapting to climate change through climate smart agricultural practices is very essential for reducing economic shock. Now, let us look into the socio-economic implication of resource dependency. Dependence on natural resources also has socio and political implications. High poverty and income inequality are often prevalent in such economies. This can lead to social tensions and political instability. This is known as resource curse. Over reliance on extractive industries can also lead to environmental degradation, further harming community health and their resilience. How we can reduce economic vulnerability? To reduce economic vulnerability, countries must diversify their economies beyond natural resources. Sustainable management of resources and investing in human capital are very vital. This involves building infrastructure, promoting education and supporting industries that can withstand environmental and market changes. Resilience building helps create stable and diversified economies. Now, what are the economic resilience strategies? Developing an alternative sectors and supporting climate resilient practices are key to economic resilience. Access to financial instruments like insurance can buffer against economic shocks. Investing in skills and infrastructure ensures that communities are better prepared to face economic and environmental challenges. And in summary, economic vulnerability refers to how financial stability, access to resources and economic structures influence a community's capacity to withstand and recover from disasters. Economically disadvantaged areas often face greater impacts due to limited resources for preparation and recovery. Reorganizing economic vulnerability allows us for targeted strategies to build financial resilience and support sustainable recovery efforts post disaster. Now, let us look into on the policy and global cooperation in the matter of vulnerability. Policies like Paris Agreement and national climate action plans of all the countries are very crucial for global efforts to combat climate change and thus reducing the vulnerability. Sharing knowledge and technology across borders supports vulnerable countries. Local perspectives should also be integrated into policy making to ensure solutions are contextually appropriate and effective. Now, there is a solution through community based adaptation that has brought success stories. Community based adaptation leverage local knowledge to develop practical solutions. Case studies from regions like Pacific Islands show how blending local expertise with scientific knowledge can lead to effective disaster management. This approach ensures that solutions are not only relevant but also supported by community. Now let us see what are the future of vulnerability reduction. Moving forward, we need integrated approach that can combine all the three: social, environmental and economic strategy. On technological front, AI and big data can enhance our ability to predict, and based on that prediction we can respond accordingly against hazards. Collaboration between governments, NGOs and communities is very essential for building resilience on a global scale. Then what is the conclusion of this discussion? Let us summarize at the end. Understanding and managing vulnerability and exposure are key to effective disaster risk management. By addressing social, economical and environmental vulnerabilities, we can build a safe, more resilient future. Thank you for your kind attention. Our next session will be focusing on exposure, and that will be the second part of this discussion. Thank you again. Meet you next session. Namaskar.